A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to good old HJN Super Graphics. For this particular instance, number 2624, what we're going to be doing here is talk about a certain game that had taken a bit of a while to come around, but was actually the beginning of a whole new series of horror-related games. Yeah, it's no secret that by this point in time, there's been a good amount of games that have covered various slasher franchises. Friday the 13th, Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and even Child's Play and Stranger Things. So of course, there's a good amount of different horror-related material to cover on. I could spend a while talking about all the different DLC packs that have come around through Dead by Daylight or even some of the other contenders that have come around horror-wise, but one thing that I might as well say is that Evil Dead the game. A title that is in fact based on the well-known Bruce Campbell trilogy known as the Evil Dead trilogy. First taking place in 1981 and ending in 1992. But of course, it's fair to say that even in the more recent confines of our time, through 2013 through 2023, Evil Dead had come back in a reboot as well as a reboot sequel. Not to mention, there was a TV series continuation spanning from 2015 through 2018, where Bruce Campbell not only comes back as the one and only Ash Williams, but the adventures of Ash Williams in this particular context, in a more modern day contemporary setting, as opposed to the old times that he was pretty much in his prime, and wielding chainsaws to defeat the many enemies brought up by the curses of the Necronomicon. Of course, this book was definitely not like any other that we'd seen before. This was in fact a product of the Dark Ages, as the third film, Army of Darkness, had showcased. Basically, at the heart of the 14th century AD, it was a time where the Necronomicon was indeed something way different. But even so, the more recent entries of the Evil Dead series still show that there truly is something to learn about from an old curse taking place from an old-timey book. And as the movies themselves have unfolded, lots of things have happened. You got unique catchphrases. You got Ash utilizing a chainsaw as his own hand after he had to slice off his other one, simply because it got possessed and started acting up on its own. And on top of all that, with the TV show especially, the craziness gets so big, it practically becomes kaiju-sized. But how does the game exactly hold up to ensure that all of this stuff was well put together? Well, for the most part, it's a third-person perspective, which does allow for some semi-open world explorations, but mainly does take place in the form of scenarios. There are in fact a variety of different challenges to complete. There's not exactly anything that's story-driven or linear-based timeline or anything that is relevant to a storyline in general. In fact, it's mostly just a bunch of challenges and even some online functionality to it. Yeah, if Dead by Daylight had taught us anything, is that some games aren't exactly made to be on the basis of something where it could have been as its own full-length story. Like, but a good majority of games, they do try to take advantage of this sort of thing. Well, Evil Dead the game is not exactly like that. What Evil Dead the game does, that's different from others, is that it utilizes challenges where you are in fact able to play as different characters from the franchise. Not just Ash himself, but some other ancillary characters pretty much. I mean, you have some of his old friends from the older films. You got some of his really old friends from the likes of the third film itself, including his allies that he had brought together to defeat the Army of Darkness itself, as well as his own evil doppelganger. Kind of hard to imagine that you would also get to play as some of the bad guys as well. But having gone through my own playthrough of Evil Dead the game itself, I can't quite say that it is as enjoyable as one would have expected. It's one thing where you get to roam around on foot, another where you get to drive around in cars, and another thing where you basically have loadouts of weapons in mind, from melee to shotguns. Yeah, who would have thought Ash's own boomstick would have actually gone ahead and made itself an appearance in the game itself. Not exactly something I wouldn't dislike, but I feel like that, in some cases, is probably just meant to be a short video's worth of summary. So with Evil Dead the game in mind, I feel like that there's not much more for me to say at this point. While there are some DLCs, including new costumes and outfits for Ash himself as well as the other characters, the customization feature, though, doesn't really get a whole lot of points out of it. You know, personalizing and peeping out on your different outfits, basically pimping the crap out of the game itself. Trying to make it look and possibly appeal more differently than one would have expected. But the way I see it, I don't see customization as something that would get a lot of points. It's more about the overall gameplay and how well does it appeal to us members of the Evil Dead fan base. And more so when you get to know the fact that some games based on other licensed franchises from over the past 40 years or so, it's fair to say that while other games like this have shown up, even Killer Clowns from Outer Space have shown up as a PS5 exclusive. And for the record, maybe I'll give that a shot. And I might have a little more to say about it because the fact is that some of these same developers and publishers have gotten together and not only made the likes of Evil Dead and Killer Clowns, but also other franchises. So it's fair to say that somebody out there is hoping to bring along these different horror franchises and cult hits into a modern day inquiry through the gaming industry. So that's actually an amazing thing out there. I mean, in the same regard as how some people are trying to bring back other cult classics that we have never even heard about, the fact that someone actually thought about the likes of various slasher and horror franchises from the 80s, 90s, etc., it's great that we still have this sort of tradition. And I'm sure that apart from Ash, and Evil Dead, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Child's Play, and Halloween, Aliens, yeah. There's definitely a lot of franchises that I've talked about over the years. And the fact is that some of these are being turned into video games as of late. But the way I see it, Evil Dead the game, while it does do a good job at representing the movies quite well, and even the TV show continuation, as there is a version of Ash Williams from the show that you get to find here in the game, I can't really say that it's wholly recommended for everybody out there who likes Resident Evil or Evil Dead or basically anything that is of anything relating to curses, the undead, and chainsaw shotgun wielding maniacs. I mean, we probably could find appeal elsewhere. With Evil Dead the game, there's only so much we can get out of it. And that unfortunately might be saying a lot, but there ain't much else for me to say at this point. Which is kind of ironic if you ask me. So in any case, let's go ahead and give the ranking to Evil Dead the game. Probably no more than a 6.7 out of 10.1. So there's some room for improvement here, but other than that, they definitely put up a good effort in keeping the Evil Dead community alive. And knowing that this was less than a year before the latest Evil Dead installment came out, Evil Dead Rise, I could see why they were hoping to get a game out there by that point. Kind of an advertising slogan or whatnot? Who really knows? But in any case, I will once again come around with another title worth talking about. And when I do, hopefully you guys will like it.